as you continue to grow and develop your leadership, this will take you very far and it will definitely keep you grounded as a leader. So I'll pause for just a moment there. Any reactions, any thoughts that you'd like to add to this, any comments around this before we move into some additional review? All right, so we're going to go into just a quick recap of the five practices, and then we'll go into a quick recap of Model the Way. So, as you remember, a couple of months ago, we introduced the five practices, this framework. This is another one of those dashboards I would really encourage you to have in front of you as you continue to develop your leadership, is to think about these five practices as these are the things that the best leaders do. And the good thing about it is that this is research based, it's data driven, it's been around for almost 40 years. And I'll be honest with you, I've taught a lot of leadership development. I'm certified in a lot of different programs, but this program is one of the best ones I've ever come across. It's one that I've really ingrained into my personal life and my professional life. And it's one that I can just speak very fluidly about because it makes sense. In fact, it's common sense. And in some ways, it's kind of simplistic if you think about it. And yet at the same time, leadership doesn't need to be complicated. You know, if you think about these five practices, if you think about a team or organization, these five practices really are what allow that team organization to flourish. In fact, I'd like to open this up for discussion. As you think about these five practices, what happens if you take one of these practices out? For example, if you take out Inspire Shared Vision, how would that impact the rest of an organization if you take out Inspire Shared Vision? Any thoughts on that? And you can use chat or you can unmute your phone. Anastasia, go ahead.
Um, for me, if you don't inspire a shared vision, you kind of don't have the same direction. One person could be going, "Oh, I want to do A," but there's no communication. There's no the leader does not inspire to connect A, B, and C for all of them to be in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Spot
just
on.
breaks everything apart.
That's right. And what's neat about that, Anastasia, is that if you don't have a vision, could you still have a good organization? Yeah, I mean, you may have leaders who are credible. You may have people who feel empowered to do what they think they need to do. You may have people that even feel like recognized and encouraged. But you're not going to have alignment because you're not working on the right things. You might be doing things right, but you're not working on the right things, and you're not clear about where you're going. What about if we took away alignment? What if we had great credibility? We kind of knew where we were going. People felt empowered. People feel recognized, but we didn't challenge the process. How would that show up? What would be the impact of that? Anybody want to take that one, or who wants to take that one rather? Definitely would stay stagnant, no growth. Absolutely. The old adage of it's just the way we've always done it, we would definitely fall victim to that, right? And so we would be a good organization, but we would do the same things over and over and over again. And guess what? Most of you probably don't remember this store, but Blockbuster, right? They were a video rental facility. You know what? They didn't challenge the process. And I guarantee you, a lot of their leaders had a great vision. They kind of thought they wanted to be like the worldwide bestseller of rental videos, and they probably felt that they empowered people, and they probably recognized people and celebrated and had motivational things for their employees and reward and recognition. And I'm sure a lot of their leaders had credibility and they modeled the way. But because they didn't challenge the process, they didn't realize, wait a second, we're doing things the way we've always done them. Mind you, the industry is changing. And before we knew it, we were left in the dust, right? So we have to think about it. And so, really, just wanted to highlight a couple because the reality is, if you think about it, is that every one of these practices makes a difference. And if you take one of them out, it will affect the organization, it will affect the team that you're leading. So each of these practices matter. And they're simple practices, but they're simple practices that have a profound impact in a business. These are practices that, when they're not practiced, people suffer, organizations suffer. and ultimately the people that these organizations serve will suffer as a result of it. So as a leader, it's important for you to have these five, and I keep using the word dashboard because I think it's so important that as a leader, you're going to be busy in your life many times with many different things pulling your attention. But if you could be grounded in not only the definition of leadership that we looked at a moment ago, right? But you can also be grounded in the what of leadership. What are things that I should focus on? What are the practices that I should be practicing? And you could ask yourself, am I modeling the way? Am I inspiring a shared vision? Am I challenging the process? Am I enabling others to act? Am I encouraging the heart? And if you could ask yourself those questions regularly, and you can take it even a step further by going to your student LPI and looking at the actual behaviors that support each of these five, I promise you, you will be an effective leader that has amazing impact in whatever you set out to do. On the flip side of that, if you start to find challenges in your leadership where you feel like you're not being effective, I would challenge you to always go back to this model and say, what am I not doing here? And it's a great way to keep us accountable in our leadership, but also to the point somebody said earlier, to be transparent, right, about your leadership. And what I would challenge you also is to teach these principles to those that you lead, because anybody in the organization can do these things as well, right? Anybody in the organization should know what the vision is, should know to challenge the process, should know about enabling others to act, and so forth. That makes the team or organization even better. Now, if you recall, back in October when we did our first session, we looked at our student LPI. And so I hope you have that nearby, because we're going to ask you to look at it again today as we go into our 4 other modules and identify where did you score on each of the practices. Where did you find that you do this behavior frequently, and where do you maybe find that there's some obstacles that you need to think about being more intentional. With that, though, let's do it just a couple minutes here on Model the Way and kind of recap what Model the Way is all about. As we know, Model the Way is all about credibility. It's about driving your credibility, because the very first person that has to follow you is who?
You.
Exactly, right? You're the very first person. So are you a person worth following? Are you a leader worth following? The question to ask myself here is, why would I follow myself? Am I a leader worth following? What do I do that inspires people to want to follow me? And that starts with, am I living the values? Am I being the example that I am saying I need to be in order for people to say, hey, I want to follow that person because that person has credibility. So part of Model the Way, and like we'll look at in each of the 5 practices, is there are 2 commitments that frame up that practice. And here, for example, in their Model the Way, it's important for us to consider that part of that is, first of all, understand what your values are. That's why last session we asked you to think about your values and identify what are your core values. Because if you don't know your values, then it's going to be easy to try to appease everybody. And so we challenge you to think about what are your 5 core values, to really narrow them down. Not because you can't have more than 5 values, but the reality is, if you have too many values, it's going to be hard to follow those values. It's going to cause a lot of frustration for you because you're not going to know which one to prioritize. And it's going to cause a lot of confusion for the people that you lead, because they're not going to know, well, which version of you showed up today? Is this important or is that important? Is this a focus or is that a focus? And if you've ever worked with somebody that is not consistent, there could be a lot of reasons why, but one of the reasons why, when I start to coach somebody, I start to peel the layers back of why they're suffering that inconsistency, it's often because they're trying to be all things to all people. They're trying to appease everything. They're trying to just be everything to everybody. And so they've never really sat down and said, okay, what are my core values? What are the things that are really important to me? Because when you know what those things are, they're going to drive how you make decisions. They're going to drive where you put your focus. They're going to drive everything about you. They're going to provide clarity to people as well. And so being clear on your values is important. And then it's not just being clear on your values, it's living them out. It's setting the example. Have you ever worked with somebody who said one thing and did another? Or you've ever seen someone who says one thing and does another? Would anybody like to share an example of that? And you don't have to name names, but an example of that, or maybe an impact of what was that like? How did that impact you or other people when that person said one thing but did another? And we'd love for you hear for you on the audio. And I can't see everybody here, so if you want to volunteer, just unmute and just share away.
Yeah, I had that experience, and there was like a friend of mine who was like working on a group project with us, and they kind of like were on a completely different path than us on some days, and then some days they were like extremely like, oh yeah, we should get this done, we should do this, and we were all like progressing, and then the next day we would be back at square one because they were like resetting everything, and it kind of made it difficult because like we couldn't like actually like work on the project that we wanted to, and we kept on like getting detracted from what our goal was.
That's awesome, Aisha. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great call out, great example of exactly what happens. Is it's not just that person that gets affected; it's everybody else gets affected because it's obvious to everybody else when that person says one thing and does another, right? So great job on that. And so we know what it's like to be around someone. And so again, this is always a good mirror to place in front of us and say, okay, these are my values, but can I point to specific things I do that show that I live out those values? Is there anything that I'm doing that's getting in the way of that? And the best way to learn that is through feedback, is to be able to surround yourself with people that you could literally say, hey, I know I said this. If you ever see me doing the opposite, will you call me out on it? You know, hey, here are my values. Here are the things that I think are important to me. Do you see me living these things out? And then just simply listening. Remember, we said feedback is a gift. And so being open with people around you about what your values are and asking them to hold you accountable is also going to be very important in your leadership development. And by the way, I say leadership development, but this is true no matter what you end up doing in life. Whether you see yourself as a leader or not, whether you're an individual contributor on a team or the leader of a team, it's important to know what your values are and to live your values. And when we talk about values, we're not talking about what your values are like at work, you know, in the organization versus at home. It's actually what your values are, period. What are your personal values? And then how do those values show up maybe at work versus how those values show up at home could be a little different, but the core values are the same. For example, one of my values is family. Now, at home, that's defined as my wife and my daughters. At work, that's defined as my peers that I've worked with for over 20 years. That we spend more time at work with sometimes with them than those that we live with our actual families, right? So it's important to understand what that value is and how it's described differently. A coworker of mine, one of her core values is fun. Did anybody know that fun could be a value, by the way, by show of hands? Yeah, so fun is one of her core values. Well, guess what? I've known her for 20 years. I didn't know that fun was her value. Now, I knew she was like the fun person on our team. She's always got a joke. When she starts off the phone calls in our team meetings, she always wants to talk about our weekend and what fun things we did and so forth. That's her value. Now, is that value different at home than it is at work? Absolutely. Yeah, at home, right? She lives in Florida. She lives maybe an hour from Orlando. So at home, on the weekends, her husband and her go on the boat. Sometimes they go see the grandkids. They take them to Disney. So fun is a little bit different at home. And at work, fun's a little bit different because she can't do those things maybe at work. But she finds a way to bring fun to work. But her core value is fun. And so let me ask you, as her peer, how important is it for me to know that fun is one of her core values? Anybody? What do you think? How do you think that impacts our team? For me as her peer, to know that fun is one of her core values.
It's important to know that like her like having fun is one of her values because sometimes that might like initiate different like perspectives on the project that you're working on and the way that you approach the project. Like if there's a fun aspect to it, that might make the project like have like better qualities and you get a better result because everyone's enjoying it.
Yeah, and that might motivate her differently than it does to me. Maybe for her, she needs to know what the fun aspect is of the project, whereas for me, maybe it's not as important because that's not one of my core values. Although Irene and I are friends on Facebook, she knows how many memes I share, so she knows fun is probably one of my core values too. I love to have fun, but really, I mean, I think about it is that is truly one of her core values. What's interesting is when we jump on a conference call, I'm usually all about business. I want to get right to the content. But when we jump on a conference call, the first 5 minutes, what do you think they're like? It's, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? Anything fun? How are the kids? I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want to get right to business. Of course I care, but I really want to get right to whatever the meeting's about. But for her, those first 5 minutes, are they important? Yeah, right. Because they gel. They bring up the fun aspect, like she wants to connect, and that's important to her. So as her peer, as her peer on the team, because I value her, I value the value that she brings to work, right? Then I'm going to look for ways to safeguard and ensure that we have a team in which she can always bring that value to work. Now, that's as a peer. How about if I was her leader tomorrow? Would that make a difference if I was her leader to know that one of her core values is fun? And how would that matter to me as a leader? What would I how would that help me as a leader to know that one of her core values is fun?
I would say if you do too much structure and you don't take the time to listen to her questions or her starting the conversation about, hey, how was your weekend? If you cut that off, she won't feel encouraged. And
Hmm.
also, she maybe won't perform at her best because you were disregarding something that's very important to her.
It's a great point, Anastasia. Absolutely. And does that mean I have to do it with everybody? No. That's where, remember, leadership is an art, not a science. So being an art, I know, okay, for my colleague Christina, when I interact with her, let me keep this in mind because that's important. But for my colleague, for if I'm managing Richard, maybe that's not as important. That doesn't mean that Richard doesn't care about personal things, or I don't care about his family. But for Richard, what's important to him is getting right down the business. So that's a way that I can meet him where he's at, right? And so as a leader, it just takes me a couple of minutes to just think about how do I engage my team, as opposed to me putting a one size fits all and saying, well, this is the way I am, take it or leave it. It's just stepping back and saying, for my team right now on this project, this person, this is what they like, this person is what they like, and let me make a quick adjustment. And those little quick adjustments can go all long way in engaging the team. Absolutely. By the way, one more question. If she became my leader, would that be important for me to know about my leader, that one of her core values is fun, and why? How would that or why would that be important for me to know that my boss's core value is fun? Anybody want to take that one? Or who wants to take that one? Somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Vanya, was that you about for this question, the making inclusive and respectful of her values?
Oh, it was for the last one.
Okay, okay, and definitely applies there perfectly. By the way, so good job on that one. But what else? What about for this one? How would it help you if you knew that your boss's core value or your leader's core value was one of their core values was fun? How would it help you as somebody in that organization or that team?
I think it would kind of be important to know that just in case it doesn't match with like what you need, you could bring it up to the leader and say like, this isn't exactly like just in case it doesn't work, but it would also
Hmm.
be good to know just in case that is how you work to better communicate with them.
That's spot on. So it's really more of that, like helping understand how they work, how you work, better understand them. And I'm supposed you're spot on with making decisions. So I know when she makes a decision, it's going to come with that framework, right? It's going to help me understand why the decision would make, and definitely less frustrated, right? Because now I understand sort of her approach. I understand her thinking, her thought process. Now that doesn't mean that that leader is all going to make every decision based on that lens alone, right? That it's all fun and that's all they do. But it helps me better understand that leader. It helps me better communicate with that leader. And that's what knowing your values is holistically why it's so important. Not just for me as an individual, but better understand my teammates, better understand the people I lead if I'm in a leadership role, better understand the person I report to if I'm not the top leader. Knowing values is not just for the fun of it, it's really better understanding. And I use fun as an example because it's such an easy example, but it could be anything. Once you know the core values, that doesn't mean we have to have the same values, but we can find alignment. And so on my team, I've worked with this person for 20 plus years, and I just found out a few years ago that fun was their core value. but it brought so many things to light about, now I understand why it's so important for her when we get on a meeting for those first 5 minutes to be that joking around and checking in, because that's her core value. And that's important as a leader when you start to really understand and identify where people are coming from. So when we think about our leadership practices inventory, our LPI, and I hope you have your LPI handy. If not, if you can grab it real quick, we had you kind of self-score on each of the LPI behaviors. And these were the specific behaviors of what does it look like from a behavioral perspective to model the way. So we talked a lot about personal example, but if you're leading somebody, making sure people feel that you're holding them accountable to what you've agreed on, because that shows that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. Following through on promises and commitments also goes a long way in modeling the way, because it aligns with saying, hey, I'm not going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Seeking to understand how my actions affect other people's performance. It's being self-aware enough and say, okay, what I do matters, what I say matters. And so how I act and what I say actually has an impact on how other people respond. And so it's being self-aware about that and taking ownership of that. Talking about values, making sure that we agree to the values that we've all agreed to and that we support those values. And then talking about my values, because people aren't going to find out my values just because they've worked with me for a long time. I've worked with this colleague for 20 plus years, and I didn't know, I didn't have a name for it. And now I understood the why when we did our values activity. So talking about values goes a long way. Hey, what are my values? Why did I do this? Explaining the thought process behind things. Those are things that good leaders do so that we can get to know each other better and more effectively. So model the way is one of those behaviors or one of those practices that I would always encourage you to think about, because all practices we're talking about today are important, but it starts with you as a leader modeling the way, because your credibility is critical to everything else happening. If you take credibility away, no matter what clear vision you have, no matter how much empowerment you do, no matter how people feel celebrated, no matter how much you challenge the process, without credibility, people will simply not follow. They may follow you for a while because they have to, but people will not willingly follow you as a leader, and you will lose all of your credibility if you don't model the way as a leader. So we're going to now transition. We're going to go into our first of our 4 modules. So now we're going to get into new content that we didn't cover last time. And we've done this recap now. We've done sort of a review of Model the Way. And one thing I'm really excited about today's rest of our journey today is that in each of the modules, one of your peers has agreed to share a teach back of a summary of that particular content, whether it's a full summary or maybe a snippet of one of the 2 behaviors of that particular practice that we're going to focus on. We also found this is going to be a way to make it more interactive today, and for you to help to hear from some of your peers about how they took this content and sort of intellectualized it and made it their own, right? And so I'm really excited about that today. So we're talking now about inspiring a shared vision. And as we get into this module, I want to encourage you to have your student LPI handy so you have the behaviors of the Inspire Shared Vision nearby you as well. Now, Inspire a Shared Vision has 2 commitments. One is the commitment to inspire by envisioning and imagining exciting and ennobling possibilities. As a leader, it makes a commitment to saying, where are we going? Whereas Model the Way is who are you? Inspire Shared Vision answers the question, where are we going? And I always tell people, when I work with executives and teams, I say to them that there are 3 key questions that everybody wants to know about their leader. And not just one time, but all the time. But these are 3 questions that constantly ruminate, constantly kind of go around in the minds of the people that are in an organization, and they have these questions for their leaders. They want to know, who are you as a leader? They want to know, where are you going? And they ultimately want to know, how are we going to get there? So who are you? Where are we going? And how are we going to get there? Model the Way answers, who are you? Inspire Shared Vision answers, where we're going. And Challenge the Process answers, how are we going to get there? So when we answer this, where are we going, it's because people want to know that they're on a path that goes somewhere. People don't want to feel like they're just spinning their proverbial wheels, right? So we envision the future as a leader. It makes a commitment to say, hey, what's exciting about our future? What's possible? And what's ennobling? And when the word ennobling, if you go back and study the root word, which is noble, is, what is something that's worth chasing after? You know, what is something that it's worth us doing, you know, that's going to engage everybody around that. And the second part of inspiring a shared vision is enlisting others. It's understanding that you're not going to go on this vision by yourself. In fact, this is not a journey just for yourself. It's how do I encourage others to also take part in chasing this vision, understanding what is it that they want to accomplish and how does this fit into the bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish. And as a leader, it's important for you to have an idea of where you want to take the team, but it's also important for you to enlist others and get from them, hey, where do you want to go? What is it you want to accomplish? And then as a leader, tie the big picture together, tie the dots, connect the dots, and say, okay, you said this, here's what we're trying to do, and here's where it connects. And this is why we need you to be part of this team. And that is my role as a leader, to see those things and to make those connections. So with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Charlotte. I think Charlotte's our first presenter who's going to talk to us about Inspire a Shared Vision. So I'm going to ask you to give her full undivided attention as your peer student leader here shares a little bit about what is Inspire a Shared Vision and what's important to know about this particular practice. So Charlotte, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm just gonna share the screen.
Okay, sounds good.
Can everyone see this?
We can.
All right. So for Inspire Shared Vision, these are the 6 behaviors. So you're looking ahead, you're communicating what you think will help you in the future, what you're capable of accomplishing, and you're talking to others about how to meet this goal, and you're positive about it, you're upbeat about it, and you're speaking with that passion. So the first commitment is envisioning the future. So in envisioning the future, you have reflecting on your past, attending to the present, prospect the future, and express your passion. Reflecting on your past, it's realizing why these beliefs are important to you so that you can see, like, you can implement what you've learned in the past and use that now to help you go forward. Attending the present, you're meeting the needs of the groups both now and in the future. So you're continuing to look ahead, but you're also seeing what do you need to do now to meet that goal in the future. And while you're doing that, you're also looking out for new opportunities and you're looking at the bigger picture and what you're trying to accomplish at the end. And you're doing all of this with passion. You're passionate about it because if you're not passionate about it, then no one else is going to follow you because they're not going to feel passionate about it either. So the next one is enlisting others. So the way to enlist others are to appeal to their common ideals by connecting connecting to what's important to them, taking pride in how you're unique, and aligning your dream with the people's dream. So you want to connect to what others think is important. So you want to have what you think is important in the vision, as well as what they think is important. Otherwise, they're not going to want to work towards that goal. And then you want to say like why your organization is different than other organizations because people want to know why what they're doing is going to make a difference. And that is it.
Okay, awesome. Nice job, Charlotte. Go back to that slide on reflecting the past, the prospect, the future. Can you go back to that one?
Yeah.
There we go. Perfect. So Charlotte, and great job on this. When you say reflecting on the past, for you personally, like why is it important to look at the past? And we're talking about the future, but you're saying here to go back to the past.
Yeah, I think it's important because you're really knowing, well, one, what mistakes you made so you can not repeat those and even grow on them. And then also know really why you're doing what you're doing so that you can be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you're saying like you got to be grounded almost, right? So be grounded in where you're coming from. You can't know where you're going until you know where you come from in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Love that. Team, everybody else out there, is there any one of these phrases here or statements here that stands out to you and why? And just unmute your phone. Anybody, as you look at these 4 tenets, if you will, of inspiring a shared vision, which one of these stands out to you and why?
I think that expressing your passion would stand out just because if you're not, like Charlotte said, if you're not passionate, then no one else is going to be passionate and you don't really have a reason to do what you're doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What else?
I think reflecting on your past, I find that really interesting because I feel like in the process of moving forward, we always look at what's happening now and what's going to happen and not what has happened.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Good point. Yeah. What else?
I think attending to the present is kind of important too, because sometimes like you can get stuck up on like the big picture and thinking about like all these like goals and dreams that you have. But you need to make sure that you're on the right track right now to be able to achieve them, and that you also like you're able to meet the needs of the group to be able to be successful in the now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that really speaks to the group of feeling like as a leader that you're connected to reality too. Because there's some leaders are so visionary, but then they're so disconnected from their people that people don't feel credibility. Like they don't feel like it's even attainable because they don't feel that the leader is aware or even present with them in terms of what's going on now. So it is a delicate balance of being future focused, but also being reality present as well. And that's a tension that we have to navigate as leaders. One of the things that when I work with senior leaders, one of the struggles that they have is that same thing. They're either too far in the future where people are like, I can't even see what you're seeing, which is great. We need visionary leaders, but we also need leaders who are grounded. And then conversely, the other challenge I deal with, the other group of leaders that I deal with is leaders who they're so focused on the present that they're so busy with the day-to-day fires they're putting out and the focus and the needs of what they need now is that they never prospect the future. They never think about what's happening. So before they know it, they're caught off guard. And any of the two examples there are wrong, right? So it's about, and it's not an easy thing, but it's balancing that. It's saying, okay, how do I focus on the needs of the present of what we need to get done now and make sure people know that I'm aware and I'm present and I'm taking care of those things. And at the same time, how do I make sure that I'm also focusing on the future because my group that I'm leading assumes or hopes that as their leader, I'm planning for the future. Because if I don't plan for the future, we're going to be blindsided by something. So I need to balance that, and I need to give trust or need to give confidence to my team that I'm balancing those two things. And that means that you don't have to do it all yourself, but it means that you have a team of people around you that can help you to make sure that these things are happening and can also hold you accountable to it. All right. Any other thoughts on this? Any other comments on this before we move forward?
With like expressing your passion, like if you aren't passionate about your goal and like going back to what you mentioned about your coworker, like having fun as a value, like if there wasn't that extra like period of time where she like got she like was able to interact with them based on her value of fun, like talking to people and all of that, she wouldn't be as interested in the project and what you're trying to achieve. That like that and that would probably like detract you from like the goal that you're trying to get to.
That's spot on. Absolutely. And that's where, and this express your passion is where a lot of people, this is where like an entrepreneur, you think of entrepreneurs, that's really what guides them is that there's a passion. There's something that they are passionate about doing. There's something that they see that needs to be done differently that drives them. And they don't know exactly how they're going to get there. They don't know, all the obstacles that they're going to face, but they're driven by what they're passionate about, right? And that passion exudes everything that they do. Now, passion alone is not enough, right? You have to have substance as well. But being passionate, and so as a leader, really being in tune to what's important to you. And believe it or not, expressing your passion is actually driven by the first one, which is reflecting on your past. Think about what's important to you. What are your values? What are certain beliefs that you have? You know, who you are, your personality, your character. All those things can help influence, those things that you're going to be passionate about. And then being open-minded, having your eyes wide open to discover new opportunities and new ideas. And when you find something, becoming very passionate about those things. Because when you do, passion alone is not enough, but passion is critical for people to know that you are serious about what it is that you're chasing after, whatever endeavor that might be, whether it's an entrepreneurial thing, whether it's a hobby, a skill of some kind, whatever it might be, but making sure you're passionate, that's a key part. And to really always be in tune with your passion. Understand if you start to lose that, why is it? What's happening? What's going on? Because that is a huge driver for achieving your goals and your dreams as an individual, but most importantly, certainly as the leader. Charlotte, can you bring up that next slide again? Would you mind just going to the next slide for a second? Yeah, and I love this one too, because it is about connecting with others. I've met leaders many times who were very, very passionate, but they were in a silo, they were in a vacuum. They didn't have a way, they didn't know how to communicate that vision to others, or they assumed that people kind of were on board. And so this is another place where you as a leader have to really be very intentional about ensuring you bring other people along with you and that you enlist them with you, because it has to be their value as well, or their passion as well. They have to see the bigger picture. They have to see that they're connected to it in order for them to become passionate. They're not going to become passionate just because I'm passionate. It has to become their passion as well. And that's where like-minded individuals can come together to do amazing, amazing work. And I love the point you have here about being unique. That's one of the things that Jim and Barry, the authors, really talk about, which is, they say that vision's an ideal and unique image of the future for the common good. That's how they define the vision. It has to be ideal, it has to be unique, has to have imagery, has to be about the future because it's not the present, and it has to be for the common good, something that's noble for everybody. But what's interesting is it has to be unique. What sets you apart? And by the way, when you think about companies, are there some companies that manufacture the same products or services? Absolutely. But there's something that makes them unique. So let me ask you guys a question, right? Here in Atlanta, we have CVS and we have Walgreens. CVS and Walgreens, right? How many of you have a preference for one over the other by any chance? Anybody have a preference for one over the other? Or how many of you don't really care? All right, so Gabby, no preference, same to me. Yeah, Brianna and Gabby, I'm the same way. To me, they're a glorified pharmacy, like no preference. And I know some of you drive, so I don't know, for me, depending on which one I'm going to turn into, it just happens to be which side of the road I happen to be driving on. All right. Now, Lauren, you like Walgreens. Would you mind, I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you mind, why do you like Walgreens instead of CVS?
It's closer to my house, and I think they have what I like more than CVS.
Okay. Okay, good. So maybe products, services, and then also, comfort in the sense that convenience, rather, right? It's closer to your house than CVS. I've worked with clients when I talk about vision, and I use the same example. I've had people tell me they will literally make a U-turn and go to Walgreens or CVS as opposed to the other one because they really believe that one is better than the other. Now, from the outside in, the buildings look the same. They have the same similar products and services from the outside in. I joke and say that they're a glorified pharmacy, but I guarantee you, if you went up to the corporate headquarters of CVS and the corporate headquarters of Walgreens, they would definitely not like my statement that I say that they're just a glorified pharmacy. They would say, oh no, we're different. Because otherwise, in my mind, why don't they just merge together, right? Why don't they just buy each other out? But no, there's something that in their own business model, they feel that it makes them unique, that it makes them stand apart. And so that's important too. As a leader, what if one day you're leading a team or a business where there's competition that does exactly what your team or business does? You still have to find out what's unique. You still have to find out what sets you apart. You still have to find out what's different. And take pride in that, right? Because you may be a supermarket, you may be a retail store, you may be a medical facility, you may be an engineering firm, you may be a manufacturing plant. But what makes you different? What sets you apart? And that is the responsibility of leaders. What makes us apart? What makes us unique? What makes us different? And then celebrate that and make sure the people around you absolutely know that and are crystal clear on what those differences are. Charlotte, great job, everybody. A round of applause for Charlotte. Good job leading us there with that first section. Thank you so much. Very nicely done. All right, so I'm going to you're welcome. Thank you. So I'm going to take back over here for just a second. All right, you should be able to see my screen again. So with Inspire Shared Vision, and Charlotte took us through these behaviors just a second ago, right? Oops, I didn't share. Here we go. Charlotte took us through these behaviors just a moment ago of what these behaviors are all about, like looking ahead. I'm upbeat and positive. So again, being passionate about the higher purpose, talking with others about the vision of how things could be even better in the future, and describe to others what we should be capable of accomplishing. So these are actionable behaviors that I need to do as a leader. Now, part of this as a leader, and especially in this leadership development program that we're a part of, is understanding what your leadership vision is for yourself. Where do you want to be? How do you see yourself as a leader? What is your dream, if you will, of your leadership and how you see your leadership coming across in your role? So the reason why it's important is because if we're not clear, we can have a lot of fog. Now, all of us here in Atlanta know the road called McGinnis Ferry, right? When I first moved to Atlanta 9 years ago, and this is not McGinnis Ferry, but let's assume it is, one of the things that surprised me was at the time I moved, it was very foggy and rainy all the time. I call it Seattle of the South. And as I'm driving down McGinnis Ferry Road, I was surprised at the speed limit. It was like 50 or 55 miles an hour. And it's curvy, it's hilly, it's windy. I didn't really know where I was going. Now, the first few times I drove down that road, I did the things that you should do when there's fog, which are what? What should you do if you're driving and there's fog? What are some things you should do?
Like slow down.
Okay, good. What else?
Turn on your headlights.
Yep, so definitely some lights so you can see a little bit better. What else? Headlights, turn on the headlights. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what's going on. Okay. Be focused. Anybody turn down their music because you think you'd see better? Right? Stupid things we do sometimes, right? So I do all the right things. Now, that's important. And the reason why is because I don't know what's happening around the corner. There's uncertainty, right? I can't control what's happening around that curve. I'm not sure really where I'm going, and so I'm doing all the right things because there's fog. Now, what happens when the fog lifts? Well, resume back to normal, right? I still should focus because it's just good driving, but I don't need to be as concerned because I can see clearly now. I don't maybe not need to have the headlights on. I turn back my music up, right? So all those things, I can kind of return back to normal. I kind of go back to normal speed, if you will, right? But here's the deal. When I first drove down that road 9 years ago, I didn't know where I was going. It's a brand new road to me. So I was even much more cautious because I had no idea what lies around the bend. I had no idea where this road was taking me. Now, fast forward 9 years later, I've driven down this road thousands of times. Now, when there's fog on McGinnis Ferry, I still should do the right things, right? I should still focus. I should still turn on my headlights. I should still do all the right things. But how do you think I feel now going down this road that I've been down thousands of times when there's fog? What do you think happens in me that I'm driving? How does that make me feel? Whereas before I had anxiety, before I had concern, maybe didn't know where I was going, uncertainty. How do I describe my emotions now? Yeah, confident, absolutely. And comfortable, yeah. Confident and comfortable, great descriptions. So what's interesting is I've driven down this road 1,000 times now. I know exactly what lies around the bend. I know that next subdivision entrance. I know maybe the next light that I'm coming up to, right? I know exactly where my next turn is coming. I know exactly where I'm going, even though I can't see, there's uncertainty, because right now there's fog, I know where I'm going. And that gives me great confidence and comfort. So team, that's exactly what visions do for you. As a leader, you have to speak in such a way that you help lift the fog for people. And sometimes the fog comes in because as a leader, you've never described what your vision is. So that brings fog. And that's where leaders struggle sometimes. They're so focused on the present that they never talk about the future. We talked about that earlier, right? So as a leader, you have to take time and talk about the future. You have to, as a leader, make sure your team knows where you're going. Because sometimes the fog is outside of your control. Sometimes there are outside forces that affect the fog. For example, if you're a manufacturing company, maybe there's a supply that you need to make your products that all of a sudden is not available. Maybe there is a recession that hits that now people aren't buying your products or services, right? Maybe, I don't know, there's a COVID pandemic that comes in that you had no control over that has affected the way life as you knew it. So fog seeps in. But if you know where you're going, even though you may not be able to clear the fog, you can give the people that you lead confidence. And I love what Omer said, comfort as well. And that's the role of a leader. So I know where I'm going. I may still need to slow down. We may need to make some adjustments along the way. We may need to take some precautions because the climate is telling us to do those things, but we know where we're going. And to me, that is exactly what visions do. It gives people confidence. It gives people clarity, even in the midst of uncertainty. With uncertainty, there's a lot of things you can't control. But one thing you can't afford to be as a leader is to be unclear. And so if I can provide clarity about where we're going, that gives confidence and that gives comfort. So I just want to challenge you as a team to always, as an individual in your leadership, to be clear about where you're going, even when there's uncertainty, to attend to the present, yes, but to also prospect the future, as Charlotte shared with us, right? Prospect the future, think about where you're going, and clarify and communicate where you're going, because that's going to help not only you, but it's going to help your team, especially when uncertainty seeps in. So with that, we're going to go into our dream sheet activity. And so I'm going to ask Irene now to put us into small groups. And I'd like if we could be in groups of 3, that would be great. If we could be in groups of 3, if not 3 or 4 at the max. If we have some groups of 2, that's okay as well. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to have you do your dream sheet activity. And if you remember, this is from your journal, from your student leadership workbook that you should all have here. So it's pages 73 through 75. Page 73 really gave sort of the instructions of how to create your dream sheet activity. And then on pages, it's not numbered, but it's the next 2 pages. They look like this. They're basically some pop-up clouds, right? What you're doing is you're basically sharing, like, first question is, what's my dream of what I would look like as a leader in the future? What would you say? How would you describe the kind of leader you want to become? And then using those other bubbles, hopefully you did this activity. What would it look like? What would you be doing? What would you need to do to work towards this? What would you have to sacrifice? What do you think you might need to learn? What do you think you might need to risk? What do you think you need to do? Maybe who else might need to help you in this endeavor? If you didn't get a chance to do this activity, you can do it pretty quickly, but hopefully you did do this ahead of time. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you into breakout groups now. And what I want you to do is each of you take about 5 minutes to share a summary, not every bubble there, but share a summary of your leadership vision. Like, how do you want to see yourself as a leader in the future? And the specific question, again, is what kind of leader that you want to become? What's the kind of leader you want to become? And then kind of color that in for those in your group. So Irene, can you give us some guidance here on the breakout groups? Man, you might be on mute.
Can I just
Irene,
put you on
you
hold
there?
real quick? Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Oh yeah,
Hello?
absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm okay, Richard.
Okay.
What do I need to do? I got a phone call, so.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so if you could put them into small groups, ideally groups of 3.
Okay. I'll do that
and
right
if there's
now.
an odd number or a number that needs 4, that's fine. So team, once you get into your groups, we're going to do this for about 15 minutes. If you've got 3 people on your team, then each of you share for about 5 minutes. And then once you've done that, we're going to bring you back in about 15 minutes. But this is a time for you guys to just individually share about your individual dream sheet activity and how you want to become, or what you want to see as yourself as a leader in the future, and any of the other bubbles there that you completed as part of your activity.
There were too many people. In one group, we were like 7 or 8, so we left and we're back here. So what do we do?
Hold on, Miss Sanders will fix it. Hold on.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
I can open all the rooms again. Oh no, she opened them, so we're good.
Welcome back, everyone. So how was that activity for you in the chat? Take a moment to just kind of drop in anything that you discovered about yourself or about your peers in that activity. So again, using your chat panel, go ahead and drop that in right now. Love the sharing that's coming through. So differences and similarities, different ways to be successful, certainly. That's a great call, Alvita. Yeah, there's that one common link. So I know some additional chats coming through, but I'll move on. But definitely keep that discussion going, thread going there. So I would challenge you. You know, one of the ways to stay sort of centered as a leader is to be true to who you want to be, and to be the type of leader that comes back to this often, so that you don't lose your way. But it helps you kind of reconnect with, you know, who is it you want to be? Where do you want to go as a leader? Why do you do the things you do? Why are you a leader in the first place? If you don't regularly reconnect to that, then it's easy to lose your way. It's easy to lose your passion. And also, success breeds complacency. So one of the things I've found is that leaders that are very successful, they have this temptation to become complacent and to assume that they've arrived and assume that you know, they must be doing everything right. But really, to be grounded and to be humble as a leader, it's important for us to constantly come back to activities like this, where you really think about what your vision is. You think about what is it you want to obtain, and you also involve others in that discussion so that you can remain grounded, so you can get feedback, and so you can have transparency with the people that that really know you well. And so I really want to challenge you to add that exercise, the one we just did, to your own development as you continue to grow in your leadership. So thanks for taking time to go through the Vision Dream Sheet activity. We are going to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to go into challenge the process. And so it is about 10:01 right now. So let's come back right and ready to go right at 10:15. So Irene, do you want to give us some instructions for the break? I think last time we had some technical things we asked everybody to do, and I couldn't remember what those were.
Yeah, hi guys. So we'll come back. What time is it? It's 10:01. So we'll come back at about 10:06. So I would just, you know, go and do whatever you need to do and just remain on the thing rather than trying to come back and me having to readmit you. So so just go do what you need to do for
okay. So 10:15. You said so. 10:15 will be, you know.
10:10. Let's say 10:10.
I think we said 10:15, Irene. Sorry. So 10:15. 10:10. Okay. 10:10. Sorry about that.
So everybody come back at 10:10.
10:10. Sorry about that.
Well, I think like mistakes are inevitable. Like they happen whenever you do like a project. It's like the way you react to it. And when you do make a mistake, you need to like realize like it happens and use it to your advantage the next time you like do something with that.
That's awesome. So I love that you said use it to your advantage. Like mistakes can be great opportunities to learn, right? They could be learning opportunities. And the other thing too is I think how you react. You said that. I think that's so powerful. As a leader, how you react to mistakes. It sounds like that could set the tone, right, for how other people treat mistakes.
Yeah, I think like because you're in a leadership position, you need to like make sure you keep your cool and use it like so that you don't make everybody panic.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And one thing I've learned in working with leaders, and thank you, Ty, is that the way you respond to those mistakes, especially if you're saying on one hand, oh, we want to be an innovative culture and all ideas are good ideas, and I want you guys to think outside the box. If I'm saying that out of one side of my mouth, but then on the other side of my mouth, I'm chastising us for making mistakes. I'm making a big deal when there's a mistake. Well, guess what? People are not going to try innovative ways. People are not going to push the envelope. People are not going to go outside the proverbial box. It's just not going to happen. So I, as a leader, to Ty's point, have to be very clear about how I react to a mistake is going to really set the tone for how my team reacts to mistakes, and are they willing to take risks in the future? And that's where what can we learn from this experience? Some people call this the term the post-mortem of a project, right? Like after the project, looking back on it and saying, well, what could we have done differently? What can we learn? But it's also when mistakes happen is not looking at them as a punitive, but looking at mistakes as something that we can absolutely learn from. So nicely done. Charlotte, could you advance the slides here just slowly so I can take a look? There may be a couple of things I wanted to point out. I just wanted to laugh about procrastination. I saw a meme recently that said, I used to procrastinate and then I turned pro. So procrastinate. All right. Search for innovative ways to improve. So look up things that you can change up differently. Next slide. Yeah, and then take the initiative, right? So I think it's really helping the group be comfortable with that. I think that's a great point that you brought out there is leading by example. And this is where the practices are all tied together, is modeling the way. If my team never sees me take the initiative, it's going to be very hard for me to ask them to take the initiative, right? So this is where all the practices we're talking about today are all interconnected, because model the way is so loudly visible here. Is how do I lead? How do I lead as an innovative leader? Do I think outside the box? Am I comfortable trying new things? I can't ask my team to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So great job on this, Ty. Thank you for bringing out these points. And Charlotte, thank you for being our pilot there, driving the slides. Nicely done. So a couple more things here on challenge the process. Really just want to add a couple of additional points here. And when it comes to mistakes, one of the things that's interesting is, how many of you know that you've all heard, I'm sure, the product called WD-40, right? So WD-40, it's a little blue can with a red top or yellow top, depending on where you buy it. And it's used for a lot of different applications. But one of the things that's interesting is most people don't realize that WD-40 happened because of the culture of allowing mistakes to happen within the organization. As the CEO of WD-40 explains it, when WD-40 is being developed, which by the way, WD-40, what it stands for is Water Displacement 40th Trial. So it's a Water Displacement Trial 40, the 40th trial, the 40th attempt. Had they gotten it right the first time, the can would just be called WD. Had they gotten it right the 10th time, it would be called WD-10. I apologize, my dog is barking. Let me get him out the door here. Sorry about that. Dang, just 1 second, sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. So the dogs are quiet when they need to be quiet, but not when they need to be quiet, rather. So sorry about that. All right. So what's interesting about WD-40 is, again, it was the 40th attempt. And the CEO explains that the reason why that worked in the way it did was because they were able to create a culture in which you could make mistakes. In fact, they didn't call them mistakes. They called them learning opportunities. And what's interesting about that is you might say, well, it's just semantics, right? Mistakes, Learning opportunities, same thing. But think about it. In a group of executives, are they going to really freely want to admit their mistakes to one another? Probably not, right? But these leaders said, you know what? We're going to use the word learning opportunities. We're going to create an environment in which we don't hide our mistakes or try to sweep them under the rug. We're going to freely admit our mistakes because we're going to use them to learn from them. And because they had that kind of culture, the company that produces WD-40 had a culture in which they could try, fail, learn, and repeat. Try, fail, learn, repeat. They could try new things. They could learn new things. They could start over. And that's exactly why and how WD-40 became the company that it is today. So it's just a funny little anecdote. WD-40, 40th attempt at trying the different chemical mixture to get the right mixture of what we know today for the can. And the reason why WD-40 was created in the first place was they were trying to solve for a solvent that could deal with the corrosion in some of the robotic arms that they were working on. And so that's how they had that culture to try new things and try different things. So challenging the process, though, one of the things that we have to be careful as leaders is that challenging the process isn't about change for the sake of change. It's not just about, let me just challenge you for the sake of challenging you. Because let me ask you, what could that lead to as a leader if you're constantly challenging others? If you're constantly challenging for the sake of challenge, what could that create in a team or in an organization? And use your chat, or you can speak up.
Maybe competition.
Yeah, definitely competition. What else? What else could happen? Instability for sure. You may lose your sense of direction. People would be discouraged, right? Because they're constantly being challenged. People would get fatigued. There's such a thing called change fatigue, right? So the leader, if I'm constantly making change, just for the sake of change, because I think that that's what leaders should be doing, I'm going to create fatigue on the team. I'm going to create a team where people feel burned out, right? And people feel like we can never rest. We're never good enough, right? And there's one thing about constantly iterating to make things better. There's a balance there between that and being the type of leader that just changes for the sake of change. But what it is about, as you notice on the quote there, it's about questioning the status quo. And the intention there is of making things better. So we have to be really true to ourselves. This is where Model the Way comes back in, is why am I asking the team to do things better? Why am I challenging this in the moment, right? And it has to be because there's a intentional purpose behind it. By the way, the picture on the right, I actually created that myself. I was walking through a building once, and it had that quote on the wall, and it had the chairs. They were all facing the same direction. And I said, well, that sounds great, but why are they all facing the same direction? So being me, the typical me, I went in and moved the chair and put it in the opposite direction. I don't know when they discovered that. I don't know if somebody saw that and figured out what was going on. But for me, I said, this is a great image for me to use in a training in the future. So I changed the chair and took a picture of it. And here we have it today in our slide deck. But as leaders, it's being willing to look at it, really to stand across the crowd, to look at things differently than everybody does, to not always be in the same alignment that everybody has to be in. What's interesting, though, is when you talk about challenge the process, the goal of challenging the process is about creating alignment. That's really the ultimate goal of what challenge the process is all about. How do we align? But here's the spirit of it. This is where there's a difference between leadership and management. You see, managers do things right, and we're thankful for that. We're glad that managers do things right. They do things step A, step B, step C. But leaders step back and say, are we doing the right things? Are we doing the right things? And this is important because if we're not careful, the fact that we do things the right way can lead us to do things the right way all the time and to never question why we're doing them. And so we may be doing things right, but we may have missed an opportunity a long time ago to do the right things. And that's where leadership steps in. It's, hey, why are we doing this the way we've always done it? Is there a better way to do it? Is there a different way? So where do good ideas come from? Well, I said earlier that the best leaders look outward for innovative ways to improve. We discussed that a little bit later. And looking outward for innovative ways to improve is a word that's called outsight. Now, outsight is the opposite of insight. So I'd love for you to take a moment, and when you hear the word insight, what does insight mean to you? When I say, hey, can I get your insight on something, or do you have insight about this? What does the word insight mean? Yeah. So Gabby, you're spot on, right? It's an opinion on a certain topic. Vanya, it's personal opinion. It's a point of view, and it comes from you. It comes from your unique experiences, from your unique expertise, from things that you know of, things that you can speak of, things that you have a perspective of. So it comes from that, absolutely. So the word outsight is actually the opposite, because outsight is I want to seek a unique perspective. I want to seek a perspective, a stance, but not for myself. I want to seek it from someplace else. And that's why it's called outsight. Outsight is the opposite of insight. And the challenge is oftentimes when it comes to good ideas, I think that I'm the only one that can come up with good ideas. But truthfully, where do good ideas come? They can come from anywhere. So here are a couple of very easy, basic examples of outsight that I wanted to share with you today that I think are good reminders to us. Let's take a look first at Uber. Uber is a great example of outsight. Prior to Uber, how did people get from point A to point B? And you can audibly submit or just put it on the chat. Cars, taxis, that's right? Planes, trains, and automobiles. You can walk, public transportation. That was it. So forever, and mainly taxis, right? For that particular service, that was the way we had always what? Done it. For years. But along came two individuals that said, wait a second, there's got to be a better way to get from point A to point B. Why not allow people to monetize and to use their own vehicles to provide these services, and uprooted an entire industry? What about Airbnb? Prior to Airbnb, what were the options if you wanted to have some lodging? You wanted to go visit someplace. What were your options? Yep, hotel. What else? Okay. Yeah, family's house. You could call somebody, call cabin. You could call a friend. Hey, I'm coming into town. Can I crash on your couch for the week? Those were your options. For years, it was the way we've always done it. For years, that was the only way. If you wanted to go somewhere, to stay somewhere, you needed to have one of these services, right? But along comes these individuals and they said, wait a second, there's another way. There's a better way. We've uprooted this industry. And now you have hotels, you have motels, you have cabins still, you have camping, but you now have Airbnb, where people are able to monetize their own living space and to rent it out. And then my personal favorite is Starbucks. So at Starbucks, the Frappuccino. And when it comes to the Frappuccino, most people don't realize that this idea was not birthed at corporate. The Starbucks idea for the Frappuccino came from a store manager herself, a regional manager actually, and she was facing two problems in her market, two problems. She was in Southern California. In Southern California, the weather's hot. And so they were noticing that in the afternoon, their coffee sales were not as high as they were in the morning, right? Because it's the afternoon, it's hot. Who's going to drink coffee? Well, I do coffee all the time, so it doesn't matter to me. But there was a segment of the population that they were seeing a decline in sales. The second problem that she was having in her market was, guess what? Not everybody drinks coffee. So there was a part of their customer base that they wanted to reach out to that wasn't sharing their wallet with Starbucks. So what she did was, by using outsight, by thinking about how else are her competitors solving it, guess where she got the idea from the Frappuccino? From a competitor. Sometimes you can learn new ideas from going outside of your company and looking at another company. Now, this wasn't stealing a trade secret. This wasn't doing anything unethical, but she was thinking, okay, how do others in this market solve for this problem? Afternoon sales slumping because people don't drink coffee as much in the afternoon. And number two, What about those customers that don't drink coffee at all? How do you reach them? And so guess what? She stumbled upon a competitor that was doing these blended frozen drinks. And so she said, what a great idea. We should be doing blended frozen drinks. Guess what? When she brought it up to corporate, they said no at first. They said it's not part of our business model. But she persisted and she found an advocate on the leadership team to help her sell the idea. And she finally got approval to go ahead and test it out. Well, let me ask you, what's the worst thing that would have happened if they gave her a couple of blenders, a couple of recipes, and she tried to making the frappuccinos and it didn't work out? What's the worst that would have happened? So lost some money, but not too much money, right? Because just a couple blenders, maybe some time spent on research and development of recipes. What else is the worst that would have happened? Maybe look for other solutions. She's out 2 blenders. Hopefully not fired because she tried some new idea. She was in a culture that it's okay to try mistakes and make mistakes, right? People might not trust her ideas, right? So there's that risk, certainly. But what's the flip side? Well, we all know the story now because I can tell you the Frappuccino, you have a point of reference. We all know what the Frappuccino is. The outside was, or the upside was, that this product became a multi-million-dollar product idea. Now you go to Starbucks and you look at the menu and you've got half of it Frappuccinos, half of it cold blended frozen drinks, and you've got hot coffee, right? But it all started with what? A leader willing to challenge the process, a leader willing to say, hey, what are some problems in the business right now and how can I solve them? So sometimes outside is not necessarily always coming up with a new idea, although in this case it was, but sometimes it's birthed out of, hey, what is a challenge we're facing right now? What's something that we're doing now that we could do better? What is something that we're not able to accomplish? Maybe there's a customer segment we're not reaching. Maybe there's an audience that we're not serving that we want to serve. For example, if you're in a not-profit, maybe there's something that you wish you could do, but you can't, and you're figuring out ways to do it. So innovation can come from a number of different sources in terms of the motivation to do it, but the ideas of where you get them, they can come from anywhere. Ideas can come from the person sitting next to you in public transportation, where you might be just asking them for their input on something. It could come from trade journals. It could come from reading. It could come from TV shows. It could come from something that has nothing to do with the industry you're in, but the opportunity is to always look for opportunities outside of yourself for innovative ways to improve, to not feel that you have to be the person that always comes up with the creative ideas. You don't have to be the chief creative officer. You can look for ideas outside all the time as long as you're open-minded to outside ideas. So how'd you like those 3 examples? Pretty good, right? And I will challenge you to continue. There's all kinds of them. I have pages and pages of these that I could show and that I could talk about examples all the time. Just a recent one last year when the pandemic hit, what started flying off the shelf besides toilet paper was hand sanitizer, right? Well, did anybody hear last year as many distilleries that would make like bourbon and whiskey and things like that, they changed their facilities to make hand sanitizer? They realized that there was a way to say, hey, how could we use the products and service or the tools or technology we have now to serve the common good? And a lot of those, in fact, there's a distillery right here in Gwinnett that became a hand sanitizer distillery, even though they were known for their. Oh, that's awesome, Malika. That's really cool, right? And that's such a perfect example. Is outside. It's being able to on a dime shift and do something. By thinking outside the box, right? By asking ourselves, what else could we do differently? How else could we serve this community or serve our customers? All right, great. So with that said, let's move on to our next section here, our behaviors. What does it look like as a leader when you are challenging the process? Well, first of all, you look for ways to develop and challenge your skills. And Ty talked about that. She says, what am I good at? And what are my opportunities? And what's it going to help me to get there? Searching for innovative ways to improve. We talked about that a moment ago. Taking the initiative. That means somebody has to actually take the risk. This person took the risk to try these blended frozen drinks, right? She put herself out there to come up with this idea, which could have failed miserably, but the worst that would have happened was the cost of a couple blenders. So it wasn't going to shut down the business, right? She wasn't changing the entire business model for Starbucks. She was simply coming up with a new product idea. And the worst that would have happened was the product failed. The upside was the product did phenomenally well and added millions of dollars to the bottom line. Making sure that projects are broken down into smaller and doable parts. Why do you think that that's important when you're challenging the process, or you're trying to do things? Maybe take a big project and break it down. Why is that helpful? Why is that important to do? Definitely, it's not so intimidating as a result of it. It breaks it down and makes it more digestible in that way. And it helps. We talked about that fatigue, right? So people aren't going to get overwhelmed as a result of it. And Gabby, yeah, great point. Milestones that you can celebrate, that you can motivate, that you can get people excited about. One thing I talked about with the peer leaders recently was that, in a marathon, and obviously I'm not a marathon runner, but in a marathon, the runners have stations along the way where they can get what? Refreshments, they can get energy supplements. Some people around the way are people that are there just to cheer them on, to give them some motivation. So they haven't finished the race, but at each milestone, there's some motivation along the way. And by breaking it down into those milestones, okay, I can make the next mile, I can make the next mile or the next milestone. Those things go a long way. Look for ways that others can try out new ideas and methods. So the spotlight doesn't have to be on me, but I can help others to do that as well and create that culture. And then very importantly, when things don't go as expected, it's not, well, why did that not happen? No, it's, hey, what can we learn from that experience? It's really approaching it with an attitude of curiosity as opposed to an attitude of blame. What can we learn from it? What can we take away from it? That goes a long way. All right, so we're going to do an activity now called We've Always Done It That Way. And let me see if I can erase my annotations. And I apologize, I don't use Zoom all the time. I use another tool here. So let me, here we go, clear. There we go. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you back into breakout groups. Irene, this time the breakout group should be between 5 to 7 people, so a little bit bigger of a breakout group. And what we're going to have you do is in your breakout groups for about 15 minutes, I want you guys to identify something that can be done differently. And I've given you some basic examples, but please don't let this be like your only guideline, right? But maybe at school today there's a current process at school that you believe could be done differently. Or maybe there's an organization that you're a part of that there's a process, a procedure, a way of doing things that can be done differently. Or maybe there's a business product or a service that you use, right? Think about the places in the community that you're a customer of, the things that you use, the products, the services, the places you shop. Is there something that you're constantly like, I wish I wouldn't do it that way, or I wish they would do it this way? If anything like that sort of jogs your memory, those are the things I want you to talk about. And then identify like one or two that you can agree with and kind of boil it down. And then as a group, pick that one thing and say, what would you do differently? Brainstorm, what would you do differently? And then create just a summary, a 2 to 3 minute summary of your ideas, because when we come back together as a group, we're going to have you present. Now, we need to be brief in our presentation, so we don't want something extremely elaborate, right? But in your groups, I want you to identify something that can be done differently, step one. Then once you've identified what it is, right? Maybe it's a product, maybe it's a service, maybe it's a process. Say, okay, if we had complete control over that, what would we do differently? And then summarize your points, maybe just a one-page slide that when we come back, you can present. And in fact, to make it easier, if you want to email your one-page summary to me, my email address, I'm going to put it right in the chat window, and that way I can just share your slide as opposed to having to share screens with everybody. So that'll probably be easier. Whoever it is you've dictated as sort of the scribe for your group, you can email me your one-pager, richard.pillay@adp.com, and then we will go ahead and have that presented right after this segment. So before we get started, what questions do you have about this activity? All right, pretty straightforward. So it's 10:41 right now. Let's come back at 15 minutes exactly. If we can come back a little bit sooner than that, even better. Hopefully your minds are already sort of turning there on this activity. And Irene will go ahead and put us into our breakout groups here shortly. Oh, Mayar is creating the rooms. Thank you, Mayar.
Yeah, 1 second, almost done.
Thank you.
Anya, can you not get in your room? Okay, so it looks like only one of them hasn't joined their room. I don't know why.
Okay.
So does Omer and Mahar have to present still?
Yeah, but theirs are really brief also. So
Okay.
do we know how many groups?
They are good.
They are.
Okay.
Looks
They
like
really
we're
are.
repopulating.
Okay.
They're all coming back.
All right. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for taking some time to work through your groups there in the challenge the process. We've always done it this way activity. Hopefully, you found this to be an interesting activity and something that was fun to just really think of something that you've been wanting to change or wanting to look at differently, and to actually think through that a little bit. So what I want to do is, from an interest of time, we won't be able to share all 15 presentations, but please make sure to send your presentations, if you haven't done so already, to both myself and Irene. We want to be able to definitely showcase those somehow. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and show 2 of the presentations that came through, just again from an interest of time perspective. So here's the first one, an online dressing room. I thought this was such a great idea. Like, hey, so many people are doing online shopping now, but you order stuff, you don't even know if how it's gonna look on you, how it's gonna come together, especially if you're ordering multiple different pieces to a wardrobe. So what a great way to put a picture of yourself out there, include your measurements, and then you can actually see maybe how that would look on you, right? What a great idea. Does everybody see the slide? Yep. So great innovative idea. Love that. And then here's another one. Let's see here. With plastic bags. So what do we do with all the plastic bags? Let me bring this one out here. So plastic bags, we know they're overused, and yet they're still so widely available in grocery stores. We already know how bad they are for the environment, but if the grocery stores would sell the reusable bags, or use, for example, old cardboard boxes like Costco or BJ's does, and what a great opportunity there. Make customers pay for the actual plastic bags, then you're incentivizing people to actually be more environmentally conscious. And what's interesting is, there's parts of the country where I travel that if I want a bag, I actually have to pay for it, right? So why is that not sort of, across the country, kind of a way of doing things to really de-incentivize people from using, the recyclable bag or these bags, these plastic bags? Instead, incentivize people, encourage people to use the reusable bags or cardboard boxes, or something that's better for the environment overall. So that's another great example of challenging the process. So great job, everybody, on that. I look forward to seeing the other presentations. And again, if you haven't done so already, make sure to send them to both Irene and myself so we can continue to review those and broadcast those somehow. But this is exactly what and how it starts, is that you see something that could be done differently and you start to brainstorm, what could we do? What would it look like if we tried to do something from a different perspective? That's how these new ideas and new approaches get birthed. And it's not always going to be a multi-million-dollar idea. For some, it could literally be taking a process that today has 37 steps and bringing it down to 12 steps, Or maybe it's taking a process that's being done and saying, why are we doing this process? And if the reason or the answer is it's just the way we've always done it, well, guess what? Maybe we eliminate the process altogether, especially if there's no valid reason for that process continuing. So don't always think that challenge the process has to be a new product or a new idea. It could literally be just making a process more effective and more efficient. In some cases, eliminating a process altogether. So great job with that. All right, we're going to go into our last two modules of our session today. And what's neat is that these two modules are really tied together, inextricably linked, because here's the deal. When you enable others to act, what we're really talking about here is empowerment. And when you empower people, that also encourages their heart. It also makes people feel recognized, makes people feel valued, and makes people feel connected. And the opposite's also true. When you encourage the heart, when people feel valued, when people feel that their efforts are recognized, that also gives them a sense of empowerment to want to do more, to want to take on more, to want to, do things that need to be done, and to really be emboldened to act. And so what's nice about these last two modules is that they really are very interconnected. But let's spend a couple of minutes here on enabling others to act. This is all about trust. It's about building relationships, making sure people feel that they can trust the people that they work with, so that they know that the people that they work with, the people that lead them, really have their best interests in mind. And then when there is that foundation of trust, when people feel like the people around them, their leaders, have their best interests in mind, then guess what? I'm willing to take on more responsibility. I'm willing to step out of my proverbial comfort zone. I'm willing to try to learn that new skill or that new task, or to stretch, because at that point, I feel like I've got trust around me and I've got a safety net to really help me. So with that, we're going to turn it over now to Omer, who's going to share with us a presentation on what does it look like to enable others to act, and his perspective on this from a student peer leader perspective. So Omer, it ball's in your court.
Okay, thank you so much. If I can just share my screen. Mr. Play, I think you need to stop sharing yours.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
We can.
All right, perfect. So my name's Omer Majawer. I'm a junior at Johns Creek High School, and I'm just going to be previewing the module that's all about enabling other people to act. And so I want to start off by talking about this like fundamental principle of leaders, and it's that we all have like this tendency to take control. And there's a very funny meme that I put on here. That's like when there's a group project, but you do all the work, and you can see Alan, and Alan. And I think that that's kind of, showed how some leaders, they might want to, take over projects and do everything themselves and not really leave much work for the rest of the people. And so I want you guys to think back to a time where you had a similar experience. Maybe you were the one who was taking control. Maybe it was somebody else. I want you to think back about how you felt, how maybe other people felt because of that. And maybe that person, or maybe you who took control, try to, justify what you did by this principle, which is that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. So that may, a lot of people think that if you want to do something correctly, you just have to do all the work yourself, and you can't really trust other people to do it right. But I want you to ask yourself, was that really effective leadership? Or was it something more along the lines of micromanagement and, or maybe what they call it in the office, which is micromanagement? Because what you're doing by taking control of this and not enabling other people to act is that you're not allowing all the other people in your group who have their own perspectives to really spread their wings and to be able to contribute. And that's not really leading. That's more like you're just doing everything yourself. And so that kind of ties into this key behavior from the LPI, which is behavior number 24. It talks about how I give others a great deal of freedom and choice in deciding how to do their work. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to dictate what other people are doing and take over everything, kind of like, Jordan Peele in this movie and Get Out, where he took over everything. He's a very good, talented movie maker, but obviously you want to be able to make sure that you're empowering others. You're allowing them to be able to contribute and to play a part in the project that you're doing, the assignment that you're doing, because that's going to be able to get the best out of them. And that's how you're going to be able to get the best possible product at the end. And so next, I want to talk about a different scenario. So imagine you're in a group project and one of the project members comes up to you, he texts you or she texts you, hey, I have an idea about the project, and they tell you about their idea. Now, what is the correct response to this? How should you, respond to them in order to make sure that you're enabling them to act? And there's kind of two choices, which is, this on the left here, you can say, yeah, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And I hope you're not doing that because you're shutting them down. Or on the right, you can say, you know what, that sounds like an interesting idea. Tell me a little bit more about that so I can see what your idea is about, so I can understand what your perspective is. And I think that's actually the correct response to it. And that kind of like the behavior that explains this is behavior number 9, which is when you actively listen to like these diverse points of view. And so as you can see, what went right about this response is a couple of things. First, you listen to other people's ideas. You didn't shut them down. You didn't just dismiss them. You tried to see what exactly are they saying? Why did it seem like a good idea to them, and why were they kind of interested in it? And then on top of that, you gave them praise. You tell them that's an interesting idea. Tell me more about it. And that makes it so that you're encouraging them to, contribute further on in the future. But even, going beyond this, you can take it a step further. At the beginning of the project, at the beginning of the assignment, go out and take the initiative to ask other people, what are your ideas about the project? What do you think we should do? And that kind of ties into this idea of actively listening to these other points of view. And it's really important because by doing this, you're taking the initiative to hear these different perspectives. You're making sure that you're encouraging others to contribute and getting these other perspectives really, you're able to listen to these other perspectives really early on in the project. So everybody feels like they're contributing to the project. And that's how you're able to get the best out of everybody, and how you're able to enable them and empower them. And so I want to wrap up my presentation by discussing this quote, which is by Hugh Downs. And he talks about, to say my fate is not tied to your fate is like saying your end of the boat is sinking. I think this quote kind of explains why we need to enable other people to act, why we need to empower people when we're being leaders, when we're in these group projects with other people. Because the fact is, when you're in a project, the results of that project can affect everybody, and everybody in the group also has the ability to affect that project. So by enabling people, by encouraging them to contribute and to bring their talents, their ideas to the table, you're able to kind of, get the best out of them and get the best possible result. Because, the project's going to be completely linked to the people who are inside of it. You want to be able to get the best out of everybody in order to make sure that you're able to get the best project possible. And you can't do that by yourself. Something that may affect you in the project is really going to affect everybody else. You want to include everybody, you want to empower them, and you want to enable them to act within your project. Okay, so that's all that's my presentation right now. I want to thank you all for listening. And I hope you learned something about enabling others.
Absolutely. Great job, Omer. Really nicely done. So team, let's give a round of applause there to Omer as well. Thank you for driving that and for putting that together. Very, very creative in your approach. Nicely done. All right. So as Omer just shared with us, really, right? I mean, just even being able to look at things from different perspective, so popular, so powerful to be able to do that, and so powerful to say, you know what? There was one way to be more engaged, but an even better way was to have created that environment ahead of time that, hey, it's okay to ask questions. Hey, I want to get your ideas on how to do this project. So even the environment you create as a leader up front to create an environment in which it's an environment to empower others. And one of the behaviors that Omer really emphasizes this, actively listen to diverse points of view, which is one of my favorite of the 30 behaviors of the LPI. That's one of my absolute favorite behaviors, because it's one that is so actionable. And it's the one that I believe leaders, when they are actively listening to diverse points of view, when they are good listeners, they can make such a huge positive impact on the people around them. So I wanted to bring this up to you today, which is that there are 6 negative listening habits that they've been able to identify that some people fall into. Some people maybe fall into even more than one. And as you read through these, I want you to think about really being self-aware. Are you possibly ever displaying any of these negative listening habits? Our temptation might be, like it was to me when I saw this for the first time, to put a name in each box of people that I know do this. Oh, I know so-and-so is really, they do this all the time. But really, this is about you. So for example, are you the faker? You know, where you kind of nod your head, you kind of make eye contact, you may even do the occasional uh-huh, but your mind is elsewhere. You're not really concentrating on the speaker. I know I've been the faker before when talking to people and listening, and so that's an area I need to always be mindful of, is to be present, to be focused. How about the interrupter? Have you ever met the interrupter? This is the person that doesn't allow the other person to finish. They're too anxious to speak. They have little concern for the speaker. They're just so anxious to jump in there, or they never ask even clarifying questions. And so, you know, that really affects the relationship, and definitely doesn't display that I actively listen to diverse points of view if I'm trying to constantly jump in and control the conversation. The intellectual or logical listener. This is the person that doesn't really understand what's happening below the surface. They try to sort of judge the words that are being said. They try to always interpret what the speaker is saying instead of just listening to what the speaker is saying and asking questions. They're rarely looking at the emotion, and the emotions are the way that we communicate also. You've got to look at the totality, the big picture when you're going to be a good communicator. So if you're going to actively listen to diverse points of view, you got to be so careful that you try to stay out of judgment when you're listening to people, that you really, really give them your full attention. What about the one-upper? Have you ever come across the one-upper? You know, that person that you share something with, but they have it worse. I always joke with people that in the holidays, except for this one because of pandemic, I've learned long ago not to ever ask my family, like my aunts, how they're doing, because if I do, I'm gonna get a whole litany of all the ailments and the illnesses they're facing, and they've got this thing broken and this thing's hurting. But what's funny in my family, it's a big family, is that when one aunt says she's got a problem, the other aunt tries to one up her. Oh, that's nothing. You should find out what happened to me last time, or the doctor visit I just came from. Their ailment is always worse than that other aunt. So I don't know if anybody joins me on that, but that's my experience for sure. Maybe you're the rebuttal maker. I know I've definitely, especially in the season of politics, the rebuttal maker, only listening long enough to form a rebuttal, but I'm only listening with the sake of not understanding. I'm listening with the intent to reply. So that doesn't communicate that I'm actively listening to diverse points of view if I'm already formulating my response. If I want to actively listen to diverse points of view, I need to really be present and really fully listen to what you're saying. And then the advice giver, I call this the bless your heart person. This is the person that, you know what, they want to listen, but they're so busy giving their own advice that they miss the point, when maybe all they needed was somebody to just listen to them. Maybe all the person that came to them to talk just needed someone to listen to them. But instead, I jump into advice mode. And for me as a coach and as a leader development person, I have to be very careful of this. When somebody comes to me and shares something with me, I have to be very intentional at saying, all right, do you want my advice or do you want me to just listen? Because I want to go in real quick and fix it for them. But that's not what everybody always needs, right? And as a leader, if I'm always fixing things for everybody else, that can actually feel very disabling. Instead of enabling others to act, I can make people feel very powerless if I'm constantly trying to fix their issues and try to take it away from them and send them back fixed and put together. I need to be the type of leader that really listens and is aware of when do I need to give advice and when do I just need to listen. So I know I went through these quickly, but I wanted to share these with you because as you develop your leadership, one of the best gifts that you can give the people that you lead is to be a great listener. And that means we have to be constantly aware of these negative listening habits that we can all fall victim to and the impact that they can have on the people around us. And I absolutely love this quote by Andy Stanley. It's a quote that I use often in the work that I do. Take a look. And I don't know about you, but I definitely want to be the type of leader that people around me always have something to say, because that's where great ideas come. That's a team that's engaged. That's a team that's empowered. That's a team that is really present with me. And if my team is quiet, then I really need to ask myself, what am I doing that's created that quiet within the team? So with that, great job, Omer. Thank you so much for leading us through that. Those are the LPI behaviors. Again, my biggest one that I always focus on is actively listening to diverse points of view, fostering cooperative relationships, and then supporting people in their decisions. Like when your team makes a decision, fully supporting them in their decisions, because that's going to let me know that I'm not just saying that I empower you, I'm actually following it through with action. I'm supporting you in the decisions that you make because I believe in you and I believe that you can definitely do what you need to do. So with that, we're going to transition now to Encourage the Heart, our very last module today. And as you see, these two modules are really connected, right? So we first learned today, who are you is model the way. Where are we going? Inspire shared vision. how we're going to get through this challenging process. But no leader operates in a vacuum. And that's why we have to enable others to act, because people have to be willing to go with us on the journey. And we have to celebrate people along the way. And that's where Encourage the Heart comes in. And Encourage the Heart is about, as a leader, making sure that we take time to recognize people's contributions, that we understand their individual contributions and we appreciate them for that. But we also understand the efforts of the team, and we take time to step back and celebrate the team's accomplishments and to create a spirit of community. So with that, Mayar is going to take us now through the presentation on Encourage the Heart. And you're in for a real treat with this very last presentation. They all did such a great job, and really excited about this last presentation as well. So Mayar, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share, and you can take it from here.
Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Forgot to share audio. So I did like a video, so mine's a little different, but we'll just take it from there. Okay, so for the interactive part of it, I decided to let you guys answer. So you can go to www.menti.com, and I'm going to pull it up right here too. So then I can present it, and then you can enter the code that I'll share in a second. And then we can go from there to see some ideas from everyone. Okay. Okay, well, while people are coming in, the code is at the top, 164712, and you can enter the code, and I'll just give the picture. But yeah, so listen, communicate, celebrate. Those are all great ideas of how you can adopt it. I definitely agree. There are many ways, but yeah. Let me know if anyone's having trouble getting on. But what's going to kind of happen is we're going to see how different people interpret Encourage the Heart. It's definitely something that people interpret differently. So we can listen to one another and learn from them. Praise, rewards, motivate. I definitely agree. Communicate, that's very important. Communication is key to having that understanding. Yes. Believe, listening, give, care. These are all great points. Celebrate. What happens in this word cloud when one word is like more commonly put in by people, it becomes bigger. So celebrate, listen. These are words that many people are saying because they're very important. But yeah, I definitely agree. And as the last couple ones, share. I think share is a big one. Kindness, um, motivate, communicate. These are all great ones. Praise, recognize. I like recognize a lot. Understand, collaborate. Collaboration is really important. And to foster that collaboration, it's important that we acknowledge these achievements. I can give an example for me personally. I just worked on a campaign for the runoff, but we had this environment where we would have this channel on Slack where we would post all our little things, and we would get so much appreciation. And as a support, we would rally together to back each other up, not only from our boss, but also from one another. And it really created this great environment for us to like thrive in. And it was just, it made the experience so much more memorable because it also fostered one-on-one relationships with our peers and our mentors and stuff. But I love these rewards, inspire, kindness, share, communicate, communication, love, accept, support, listening, tolerate, respond. These are all great words. I don't know if people are still coming in, but if you want to add anything else, then yeah. But yeah, respect is important. I agree. So I think the biggest ones we took away, and a lot of people said them, were encourage, celebrate, listen, communicate, motivate, praise, believe, inspire. I think those were the main ones, but acknowledge, understand, those are a little bit smaller, but motivate and things like that. There are definitely the big takeaways that we can take away from Encourage the Heart. So thank you guys for participating.
Thank you. Nicely done. Good job. Awesome work with that. I really appreciate it and love the creativity of how you put that together. And that really is, the heart of Encourage the Heart, is that it really is about leaning in and being creative in your approach, that there is no one size fits all. Not everybody likes the same way to be recognized. And that means as a leader is to really listen and be attuned with what your team needs from you and how they like to be recognized and how they like to be encouraged. All that goes such a long way because again, you're dealing with individuals and each person is a human individual and they're wired differently and they have different personalities and they have different character traits. And so it's understanding where people are. And so as a leader, thinking about these behaviors, how often when you're in a project, do you encourage others as they're working their project? How often do you come alongside them and do that? How do you express appreciation specifically for the contributions that people will make so they can continue to drive those contributions? Think about how creatively you do it because everyone likes to be recognized differently. So you don't have to give everybody the same thing. And that's where a lot of people struggle is they feel like they've got to be equal. You can be fair, but not everybody has to have the same reward, right? You can be different in how you do the rewards and still be fair with everyone. I praise people for a job well done. That means I have to be aware of what people are doing. I have to take time to observe, and that's where we tell leaders all the time. It's so tempting oftentimes to be stuck doing my job and be at my desk. But as a leader, I have to be observant. I have to look up and look around. I have to get up and walk around if I'm in person with my team and see what they're doing, so that I can praise them when I see the right type of work. Public recognition is another one. It's just being aware of where people are. And public recognition, you have to be careful with because not everybody likes that public recognition. But deep down, everybody likes to be recognized. So I have to figure out what's the best way to do that. And there's a benefit of public recognition, especially when you tie it to values of the team, because then people see, wow, these are the things that we should be doing, and we're going to celebrate them. Our values are not just words on a wall, but they really do make a difference and they really do have meaning. And then finding ways to celebrate those accomplishments, which is, again, all about that creativity, all about looking for different ways to celebrate accomplishments. And everybody has a different approach. So if you've ever heard of the book, The Five Love Languages, there's a book called The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. So as you start to think about your career in the future, you may want to read that book and think about in the work environment, how do you show these five languages of appreciation? Some people like the word, the spoken word. Other people like a gift and within boundaries, right? So other people like acts of service, right? So think about what and how do people like to be recognized and appreciated. And here's the cool thing: you can just ask people. You can just ask people. You don't have to figure out and try to investigate it. You can literally ask as you're getting to know your team. Hey, how do you like to be recognized? How do you like to be shown appreciation for your efforts? That should be a conversation that every leader should have with their team as they get to know the team that they lead. I love this quote here by David Campbell of the Center for Creative Leadership. Take a look. So as a leader, right, it's so easy to get caught up in the work we do and get tied into the day to day, but we have to, as a leader, take the initiative to look for ways to have ceremonies, to celebrate people, to celebrate individuals, and to celebrate teams. We have to be intentional in doing that in our leadership in order for people to really feel celebrated. So I've got a final activity here for you, and this is just a self-reflection activity. This is not for breakouts. I want you to just take 2 minutes. This is 5 minutes there, but really only takes about 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about what are some people in your life that you need to recognize that you either haven't recognized at all or you haven't recognized recently. I would ask you to think about, for example, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's another adult in your life, maybe it's a peer. Think about somebody that you haven't recognized ever or even recently, and think about what are some ideas that you could come up with to show them recognition. And here's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. I want you to choose by what date this week you're going to act on these ideas. Otherwise, this is simply going to be a intention, I plan to, but it never realizes into an action. So I want you to take a couple minutes right now just on your own. Think about 1 or 2 people in your life that you need to recognize, that you need to show some appreciation for. I want you to brainstorm on your own a couple different ideas. You know this person better than anybody else. And I want you to write down to yourself, what's a date that you're going to accomplish that by the end of this week? Take 2 minutes to do that, and then I'll come back and wrap us up. All right. With that said, we've just wrapped up our last module of the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. And I hope you've enjoyed your journey that we've been on between program day 1 and day 2 of our Student Leadership Challenge. But your journey continues because it's not just what you do inside the 4 walls of this virtual classroom. It's what you do outside of this and what you continue to apply in your growth and your development. So I want to challenge you to go back to your student LPI also and think about which leadership behaviors, now that you've been through this second half, so to speak, are you going to take some actions on? Review your leadership journal, review your LPI, Pages 151 through 166, this is something for you to do over the next couple of days because there's some reflection questions there. And as you complete it, it's just question 1 on each of those pages, which is just about a behavior that you want to implement. And then I'll challenge you to choose somebody that'll hold you accountable and share your action plan with them. And then pages 180 to 183 are 10 tips for becoming a better leader. That's a great next section for you to read through as well. We're not going to do this in this session. This is really more for your takeaway. And remember, the faintest ink is more powerful than the strongest memory. So, take down notes, write down what you plan to do because it has much more of a chance of actually getting done when you do that. So again, complete question 1 of those pages in your leadership journal and make sure to find somebody that you can hold accountable and that you can share your plan with. The last thing I wanted to share with you guys as we kind of close out is that there are some myths that get in the way of our leadership. And as we close out this part of the program, I want to just challenge you with these myths because these are myths that when I work with senior leaders, they sometimes encounter these myths as well. And we have to hold on to the fundamentals that can keep these myths at bay. The first is, as you think about your leadership, is some people feel like you either have it or you don't have it. It's either talent you have or don't have. But here's what the reality is. You got to believe you can. And I believe that you can and I believe that you are great leaders. But it starts with you believing in yourself. Second myth is position. Some people feel that they've got to be a leader only if they have the right title or position, that's what gives them leadership. But that's the myth. The fundamental truth is that you've got to aspire to excel. You've got to bloom right where you're planted. You've got to choose to lead regardless of whether you have the title or position. And as somebody said even earlier, sometimes the leader, the true leader, is not even the person with a title. So never rest on titles to be leaders. Be a leader right where you are because you already are. Strengths. Some people feel you should only be leaders in things that you're really strong in or that you're really good at. That, if you're not good at it, then you might as well just not even lead that. But that's another myth. The reality is that the best leaders, they challenge themselves. By putting yourself out there, by stretching, by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, that's where you grow. And yes, surround yourself with people that can help you in those areas of weakness, but develop those areas of strengths and develop those areas of weaknesses as well. The fourth myth is self-reliance. There's a lot of leaders out there, unfortunately, today that live in a vacuum. They believe that they have to do it all themselves. They believe that they have to do it all themselves. And if you want it done right, as Omer said, then do it yourself. But the reality is that the best leaders, they have a group of people around them that they engage support. They don't live in a vacuum or an island to themselves. They surround themselves with the right people. And I'll challenge you as peer student leaders that you continue to grow and develop. Always surround yourself with people, even people that give you sometimes the harsh advice that make you better, because iron sharpens iron. So always surround yourself with people. And then finally, some people believe that it comes naturally, that leadership just comes naturally to some people and other people it doesn't. But that's not true. The fundamental truth is that the best leaders are the best leaders because they practice deliberately. They never stop practicing. And they are the top of their game today because they've put in the blood, sweat, and tears to get to where they are today. And what we see is the culmination. We see the end of it. We see the journey at the end where they're successful, but we didn't see the journey to get there. And each of them had a journey. So I challenge you in your journey as a leader to continue to grow and to develop and to continue to practice. You won't always get it right. You'll make mistakes along the way, but you'll become a better leader because of it. Thank you for allowing me to partner with you in your leadership development. Thank you to Irene and to Randy for inviting me to be part of this journey. I hope to continue to be connected. And if I can ever help you in any way or support you, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again, Irene, for this wonderful program or for this platform to partner with you guys. You guys are all amazing leaders, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it if you could give a thumbs up to Mr. Pillay. He's donated his time to be with you all. I want to also thank Omer, Mahar, Ty, and Charlotte for their help in doing the presentations. They did that over their spring break. And so that was awesome. I did want to tell you that we are going to, in February, we're going to have a little bit different of a program day. Mahar is working on part of it to do with environment, which should be really interesting. But we're also going to do something where I'm going to have all of you as your groups together and are going to come up with a movie scene, a scene from a movie. It has to be appropriate movie. It can't be something inappropriate. Remember, You guys are high schoolers. So a scene from a movie that you guys can show via YouTube. You'll have to send me the YouTube link. And you talk about the leadership skills or lack of leadership skills that you're seeing in that particular scene in a movie. So there's a million of them out there. Almost every movie you can find a scene. Even Ferris Bueller, you can find scenes of leadership and lack of leadership. So there's a million of them out there. You guys have to work as a group to find that perfect scene and then tell us why you chose it, what kind of leadership things you're seeing. I'm going to send more out to you guys about the requirements for it, but it should be fun and it should be something that we're all going to learn from each other. The Centennial Northview group that are working on the cemetery together, you guys are going to do this separately. So Centennial's going to do their part, Northview's going to do their part. So you're not working together on this. That's one group that I'm splitting up for this particular project. So if I'll be sending stuff out in the next day or two. Make sure you check your email. That is going to be part of our next program day. I'm going to only ask you to do one thing. I don't want you to pick Harry Potter. Okay? Pick anything but Harry Potter. Don't pick Harry Potter. And why? I don't know. I just don't want you to pick Harry Potter. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about the assignment? Anybody? No? So again, thank you so much, Richard, for all that you do here. I think the kids got a lot out of it, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully he'll be back next year to talk to you guys again about something else.
Sounds good.
And so I'm going to end today the way I end most every conversation. Go Saints.
Miss
See you guys
Who
next time. Who dat? Okay, you guys have a great day.
Miss
Back to
Sanders,
class.
do you want
Yes.
us to take a picture?
Oh yeah, we need to take a picture. Richard, can we take your
Yes, please.
stop your
Great.
screen? Okay. So everybody undo your video so that we can take a picture. Mahar will take it because they say I shake. And I'm actually going to hide myself so that more of you can be on here. Hide Sophia. There. Okay, so sit up so everybody can see you.
Okay. Ready? I'm gonna take a couple. 3, 2, 1. And just a couple more. Let's put on the screen. And sorry, let me go back. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Mahar, can you go to the
I think
next
we're good.
screen where it says 1 to 3?
Yeah. No one has their video on in that screen, so
Oh, that won't work.
it's just a bunch of names.
Let's see if they do it now. Nope, nobody wants to put their picture up. Okay. Well, then I think our job here is done. If you guys have any comments or something, go ahead and send me an email, or you can ask me now. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and close this out because we have our next program day coming. So anybody have any questions? Anybody need anything? No? Okay, well, I'm going to say goodbye then. Oops, my video's not on.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye. See you guys later.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks so much again.